Next up, we have a panel to go through with Mary Lou. She's the CEO of Empowered Women Speaker, and she's a personal coach and a coach for a lot of executive women in the Bay Area. So I'd like to invite Mary with her team of speakers here. We have an addition to the speaker list, which we haven't updated. We have Rebecca Parson, Shane Reilly, and Divya Shroff joining us, Mary. Thank you.
New Music Podcast.
Hello, everybody. All right, so do you want to do a quick introduction of who you are and your company name?
I'm Divya Shroff. I am the Chief Clinical Transformation Officer for HCA, Hospital Corporation of America. I'm a physician by training, and our company is the largest for-profit healthcare company. We have 165 hospitals in the U.S. as well as internationally.
Thank you.
And I'm Rebecca Parsons. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for ThoughtWorks. We're a global software consulting company scattered across now 13 countries on every continent except Antarctica.
Great, thank you.
And I'm Shane Reilly, I think officially an entrepreneur in residence. That's my own residence. So in between ideas.
All right, so we're going to go ahead, and our focus on this particular panel is creativity and technology, and how you bring that into your business and make it a really thriving business. And I'm going to go ahead and start with Shane. Shane, I know you're an interior designer, which means you have a lot of creative juices flowing through you, but you created something very special through some of your innovative ideas. Do you want to share with us how you came about your business that you created called Decorati?
Sure. I had been practicing professional interior design and got really frustrated with the lack of information online. So I started a company called Decorati that was going to be an online service where we brought together all the high-end interior design products and then interior designers. And so that launched in 2007, and we sold to Gilt Group, which is a large e-commerce site based in New York City, in 2011.
So you had this creative idea, and then you had no idea how you were going to implement this, right? So what were some of the steps that you took in order to bring that creativity into conceptual, to really have it as a business?
Sure. Well, I really thought about the consumer, the person I wanted to use the service, and fortunately I had been a professional designer, so I knew it would be really important, for example, to be able to search for products and how you wanted to search for them, which now everyone does all kinds of searching online, so this seems like old news, but years ago there were even very few manufacturer websites online in this particular niche industry. So I just really kind of laid out, I want to be able to search these different ways, and I want these different brands, and then hired a company to build a prototype, and then eventually hired my own engineering team to actually execute it.
And then, what was it, 4 years later? You
4 years and a little bit later,
company?
we sold the company. Gilt Group was relaunching their home business and decided to acquire Decorati as part of that process to help relaunch. So that was exciting because then we could do a lot of things we were doing in our small internet company on a much bigger stage.
Mm-hmm. And when we were doing our chat earlier, I was saying, did you have the intention of selling your company at the time when you actually created it?
No, I didn't, and I think that's probably like a good mindset to have. So of course we were shooting for the stars, but the acquisition made a lot of sense at the time that the offer came. So,
Great. Well, congratulations on your success.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to move to Rebecca. Rebecca, you work with ThoughtWorks, and you guys have a very special mission statement. And you bring creativity as well as technology into that mission statement. So would you share with us what that is?
Okay, well, we've been around for about 20 years, and we're a privately held company. And over the years, we've been trying to more clearly articulate why we're in business. And we are a rather non-traditional company in many ways. And we had a management meeting a few years ago where Ben Cohen from Ben & Jerry's came and spoke to us about their three-pillar business model around sustainability and the environment and customers and being a profitable business. And that really crystallized for us how we wanted to look at what our objectives really were as a company. And we codified those into 3 pillars. And the first one is to run a sustainable business. And that's sustainable from the perspective of long term, but also, we're not in it to make a whole bunch of money. We're in it to make a good amount of money that can fund the other activities. And the second pillar is our technology focus, to revolutionize the IT industry, rather audacious for a 2,500 person company, but also to champion software excellence. And we truly believe that there's a lot of improvement that still needs to be made in the IT and technology industry, and we want to really focus on how do we make our industry better. But then the third one is to passionately advocate for social and economic justice. And this is not just corporate social responsibility. I feel we go much further than that. Our core competence is software development, and so we make our services available to mission-driven organizations to help them use technology to advance their missions. And we also, in incorporating these pillars, when we make decisions, we look at it from those 3 different lenses. How is this advancing the state of technology and the quality of software in the industry? How is this improving instances of injustice? And how does this contribute to us being a sustainable business? And so we try to balance those on every decision we make. In our planning, in our hiring, in our sales and marketing, it permeates the entire company.
Great. And I know you guys do a social impact program as well.
Yes. One aspect of this third pillar, we have a social impact program where we budget in our planning cycles a certain amount of man hours that we are going to make available for pro bono work. And we have a budget around how many man hours, both globally and in our local offices, will be contributed to mission-driven organizations. And if we are in a situation where some of these organizations can pay us some money for this, that effectively just expands the pool, if you will, for how much work we can make available in other contexts. And so by doing this, we've actually incorporated this drive for supporting mission-driven organizations into our business model. This is part of our planning cycle. How many hours are we going to allocate to this? We have other programs internally as well, where we organize volunteers to work on particular open source projects that are in the development space, things like OpenMRS, which is an open source medical record system, or Rapid FTR, which is a UNICEF project to reunite families and children after natural disasters.
And I know when I was speaking to you about ThoughtWorks and your mission statement, it really spoke to me because I love how, and that's probably, for 20 years being in the business, having that model and everything that you do, all the decisions that you make based on that, the 3 pillars, I love that. So.
Well, I think going back to what Maya was saying earlier about tapping into an internal motivation for innovation and creativity, I think the fact that we are so explicit both on our technology objectives of software excellence as well as our social objectives,
right.
it provides an environment where people really do want to figure out how can I solve this problem, how can I make this situation better?
Right.
What can I do differently? And so it provides that spark for creativity, which is such an engine for innovation.
Right. And within a big company like ThoughtWorks and having 2,000 employees, having that aspect of that social justice, I think really creates a more, not only a great company, but a community around just having the same goals, even as employees, because everybody wants to give back, right? But they're giving back in their own way within that big, larger company.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we work for quite hard is to both have localized cultures. So if you go to our office in Recife, Brazil, it looks like a ThoughtWorks office, but it also looks like a Brazil office. And you go into India and our offices, there is a commonality, there's a global culture and a global feel that also has that local specialization, which helps us take advantage of the diverse cultures in the cities that we're in.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Now, Divya, you work with the Hospital Corporation of America, And you have a very special title that I've never heard of in a hospital environment, and it's Chief Clinical Transformation Officer. So tell me what that really means as far as what you think that title means, bringing that into the healthcare environment.
Yeah, when I was asked to take on this role a little over 3 years ago, that was actually my first question. I said to our chief medical officer of the company, I said, so what exactly do you want me to do with this? And I think that's the fun part, is by not having a discrete concept, I've actually been able to innovate a lot within the company. I heard someone say earlier, you know, listen, think about things. And when I first joined the company, I spent the first probably 2-3 months just listening, seeing what was happening, the dynamics, what were the issues at play. For those, hopefully all of you are somewhat aware of what's happening in healthcare right now. There's a couple of major initiatives. The first is rolling out electronic health records throughout the company and meeting various stages. For a company our size, that's been a big transformation. We still would, and over 50% of our hospitals, our physicians still handwrite orders as well as documentation. And I know in Silicon Valley that's hard to imagine, but for the rest of the country, that is how care is practiced. Well, there's a lot of inherent issues with that. And so one of my roles has been is how are we actually going to change how an entire concept of medicine has been practiced for years. So clinical transformation in this case has really meant, let's rethink how we are going to practice medicine. A lot of times transformation also means translation. So helping, whether it's the operations side of the business, which is very much thinking about margins. We've gone being private to public while I've been with the company, really thinking about that bottom line, to people who have just gone into healthcare for the purpose of taking care of patients. How do you make those two ends meet? And then, of course, because technology is such a part of healthcare now, how does technology and the solutions are being developed, how does those actually translate to people being able to use them? So I love it when people innovate great ideas, but if they haven't spent time in a healthcare setting, to know that it's not practical to come up with a solution when a nurse might be running around changing 5 different bedpans and answering call bells, to then say, oh, well, we'll just send her an email. She doesn't sit, or he, I should say, either or. You know, they're not sitting in front of a computer. They're actually spending face time with their patients. They're being judged on that. And so a lot of my role is really helping think about what's really practical and what's going to actually allow us to take care of our patients better.
And I know that in order to bring more creativity into the healthcare arena, HCA did something very unique. So you guys created something called the HC University?
Yeah, HCare University. So I would say if anyone is looking for a job right now, please go into information technology, and a place that is looking for talent is Nashville. Yeah. So if you're looking for a job, Forbes just rated Nashville, I think, the #2 company for job growth. And one of the reasons why was something we did. We're the largest employers, but we recognized we were competing for technology resources with all the other big players, whether it's the electronic medical records company like Epic, whether it's other healthcare systems. So instead of being in this constant competition battle, we said, we're going to think about this differently. And a program was started called HCare University. And we said, we are going to take and open it up to any college graduate. You don't have to be thinking about going to medical school. You don't have to have an informatics or an IT background. Come apply, tell us why you think you'd be a good fit for our company. And we really think that at the end of the day, anyone in this room is going to be a healthcare giver for a family member, and you're always going to be a patient. So it allowed us to hire over 100 young minds over the course of 3 classes, put them into various projects that we're implementing, mostly in the technology space. But we also had to push ourselves and say, we need to give them a voice. We need to allow them to show us things that we may think there's a standard HCA way of doing something. If they have a great idea, something as simple as a presentation using Prezi. I don't know who in here knows Prezi, but I can tell you in Nashville, that was a new concept that was introduced a little over a year ago by these young minds. And it's that sort of forward thinking that I think is going to help position us to be successful as we transform.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to go back to Shane. And Shane, I know when we were speaking that you would do things differently in the way that you created Decorati, because you had to do a lot of education along the way, right? Do you want to share with us what it was that you actually had to do, and then how you would change that and make it a little bit different if you were to redo it all over again?
Sure. Well, I think what we really had to deal with was an industry that was not using technology at all, so similar to some of the issues in the healthcare industry. Certainly the decorative industry, in my case it was home, but I think fashion is probably not, in a similar place where the industry, people who produce the products and the supply chain are really not using technology. So we spent, to answer your question, an enormous amount of time in the first 2 years of our business literally telling manufacturers of these products why they should have websites. And of course that's hard to believe now, because fast forward a few years later, they're posting products on Facebook and stuff like that. So, but we definitely spent a lot of time educating them. So I think anytime you're early in a field and trying to be a pioneer in a way, you actually kind of have to pull the industry with you sometimes.
Yeah. So because you came into the industry early, do you think that's the reason it was so successful, because there was nothing else out there like that? Or was it just more of a struggle, actually, because you had to really educate people?
Well, I think we were in a good place because we were the kind of only act in town in this, one specific space, doing exactly what we were doing. As time went on, the other companies, there were more people involved, but I think so. There were definitely some advantages to being the first mover, but it's just that when you're small, we were a small internet company, having to expend a lot of resources on. Every time you're speaking with someone, you're trying to educate about why they should join your service, having to talk about the internet in general for at least 50% of that conversation, can definitely slow you down a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think it would be really different today. So to answer the other part of your question, I mean, everyone is using the web, and probably what we would really do differently is we would be mobile first. So, I mean, even that's been a huge shift.
So we have a lot of entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs here in this audience. How did you attract the attention of Guild to buy you out? Any idea? What would be some of the tips that you would give the audience?
Sure. Well, they solicited us, so that was nice. But I think that what helped was we really built a very strong community. So we were very unique. We had both professional designers and consumers really interested in design. We had great relationships with the manufacturers, sort of the supply chain, people who were participating and posting products on our site. So I think it was probably just really the membership that really was important.
So they were buying the membership and the list that you had already developed, the community.
Yeah, way more so than the technology, because the technology became sort of irrelevant, but it was really just the users.
Yeah, they always say the money is in the list, right?
Yeah, there's some intelligence to that.
Yeah. And Rebecca, you guys have 2,000 employees worldwide, and you were sharing with me that any staff member can actually pick up the phone and call your CEO and upper management to talk with them. So share with us that concept, because that's very rare for a company that size.
Well, when I started with the company, we were just under 100 people. And it was a very important part of our culture that everything was completely transparent. We had a completely flat hierarchy. There was the founder, and then there was everybody else. And as you grow, as you get spread across 13 countries on all of the different time zones, that becomes very difficult to manage. And we actually spent a lot of time thinking about what are the cultural invariants that we want to maintain, and what can we do at scale that gives us what it is that we achieved as a culture when we were much smaller. And if you take this flat hierarchy as an example, it's not the existence of a hierarchy that's a problem in most organizations, it's the fact that you can't go around it. And so you have individuals in a position to control the flow of information, both up and down. And so what we said is, okay, we'll accept reality. We need to have regional directors. We need to have some kind of chain of command, but it is an absolute rule that you can always violate it, both ways. And that way, you don't have that siloing of information, you don't have that interruption and disruption of communication that so often happens as organizations grow. So not only can anybody call up the founder or me or the CEO, but they can go and talk to anybody that they want. And it's a wonderful way to really understand what's happening at the ground level. I'm the chief technology officer. I spend time talking to our junior developers who are just out of school to understand, okay, well, how are things different for them in that context? And so, we've looked at various aspects of our culture and what is it that we are really trying to achieve? What is the important core, and how can we achieve that objective at scale? And I think that's one example that most people can really get their hands around.
Don't you guys just feel this company is all heart? Don't you guys feel that in everything that they do? And I really love that.
We're also geeks.
Geeks with heart?
Geeks with heart, yes. It is a rather narrow pool, but we do exist.
Yeah, it is very, very unusual that you guys have that. So we have a few minutes left. So how are you going to really change this rigid and static healthcare system right now and really bring some creativity? What are some of the thoughts that you're having with your HCA company and with what you're thinking?
So one thing I challenge our company to think about is really think outside the box. So in medicine, there's always a traditional way to do things. I mean, even thinking about the medical education and how you go through training and curriculum, it's very, structured, and there's a right way to do things. And as things like evidence-based medicine have come into play, it almost takes you away from creativity, which is okay. I mean, we need to be more in line with diminishing variability of care, which is going to lead to better outcomes as well as decreased cost. But on the same token, I think there's a lot we can learn from other organizations. Think about your company and where you're bringing professionals together to have a more enlightened conversation in a more enabled space. You look at companies like Doximity or Sermo, both which are just becoming these physician collaboration sites. And it's fascinating from an outsider, again, a physician, so not a technical person, just to see how much traction they're getting. So something I'm proud of that we did at HCA, and I was able to convince our technology team, is to put a site outside of our firewall, which we call hcadoc.com. And that site's been live now for a little over a year, doing little beta pilots. But it was a way for us to start to create a brand identity of our physicians and create a safe space for them to be engaged with what's happening. Okay. And the entire concept, though, was based on looking at organizations like yourselves or others, which is look at Facebook, look at LinkedIn, look at SharePoint. How are we helping the busy healthcare professional be more engaged with initiatives that a company is pushing out or wanting them to be involved with, but we're also looking at their productivity, which is defined by, number one, how many patients they're able to process through a system. They're being judged on the quality of care they're giving, as well as just that encounter. And I think everybody, again, always needs to take in mind that as a patient, that interaction between physician and patient, it still needs to be very tangible. It still needs to be very connected. Right. And so we're just trying to think about how we approach that.
Right. Especially in the hospital environment, you need that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it can't be all about technology.
It can't be, absolutely. And I mean, I think that's the creative part, where every technology solution sounds great, but at the end of the day, especially in the hospital setting, you're dealing with death, illness. Right. You want to make sure that the quality component doesn't get lost. Right. And that's where people still have time to be people and healthcare givers. Can you agree more?
Well, thank you, ladies, for joining me on this panel. And one quick thought, and we actually have 30 seconds, one piece of advice that you would give all the entrepreneurs out here as far as being a businesswoman, caring for your life balance. Let's go with that. One piece of advice.
Well, first I was going to say just go for it, but now if we're talking about work-life balance, that's a whole other topic. Actually, I'd probably just still say the same. Just go for it. Don't let anything slow you down.
Okay, Rebecca.
Never forget that you can learn pretty much anything you set your mind to learning.
Right?
Follow your passion. Whatever you're interested in, it'll lead to the right results.
Right. All right, thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
And everybody else, thank you for joining us, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Mary.